Welcome to a special Odell Watch 2022. The Cowboys, are they on the clock? They might be. Every single player, it seems like every single coach, every single person in the front office, except for maybe Stephen Jones, are recruiting Odell Beckham to Dallas. We are here to break down, could it happen? Is it going to happen? Is he a good fit? And more. Aidan, hello.
Hello. This is big for you. Usually Philadelphia is the city who's like, oh, shiny new toy, have to have it. There's a free agent and he hasn't signed, needs to be ours. That's baseball for us right now. So let's focus on football. Odell Beckham Jr., this is unique circumstances. Usually people of this talent or caliber haven't been available in the middle of the season since last year when Odell Beckham's dad posted those videos. It was like, his quarterback sucks. So here we are again. Everybody's giving their recruiting pitch. Give me yours. Like, what are you saying if you're a member of the Cowboys brass trying to get Odell there?
Make it happen. Make it happen now. I mean, okay, so he's a 30-year-old receiver. He just turned 30, I think 3 days ago, maybe. He's coming off his second ACL injury. He's coming off an ACL in the Super Bowl in February. It's not too long ago. They have another wide receiver coming off an ACL injury 2 months earlier than that, and Michael Gallup, who I think everybody can agree on isn't 100% back yet. He just isn't himself, whether it's physical. I think it's also an addition of mental as well. But they still need to make it happen. I mean, I'm going to play some highlights here while we talk so everybody can see. These are the highlights. Every catch Odell made for the Rams last season. He had 27 catches, 7 touchdowns. That's what I'm talking about right there, Aidan, is that infusion of big plays that this offense needs towards the end of the season and in the Super Bowl. I don't expect him, if he signs, to be that big of a factor until maybe the Eagles game and then into the Super Bowl. That's my kind of thinking of time frame.
Well, that's kind of how it was last year with the Rams. If you remember, I think that 49ers game was his first game, and they were like, this is rough. This does not look like he meshes in the offense.
Nope.
And then slowly but surely puts it together, becomes a big part of their offense, catches a touchdown in the Super Bowl. You mentioned the 7 touchdowns. It's just another reliable weapon on a team that has 1 total. I mean, I think you guys really like the tight ends, but I don't know. It feels like it's CD and then who? And it just feels like this makes so much sense.
I think it's CD, and it's just like you said, a combination of, Jason Witten 2.0 and Dalton Schultz that'll have 7 catches, but no yak. And then they have 2 rookie receivers or tight ends. I'll say that word again, rookie tight ends, one who was undrafted. Can you fully rely on them down the stretch and into the playoffs? I don't know. This is a player, a proven player who now just won a Super Bowl, was probably on his way to get 200 yards in that game and win MVP if he doesn't get hurt. And everything you hear now about him is how much his teammates love him, his coaches love him, how much of a different player he was than when he was 19, 20, 21 years old playing in New York.
Yeah, I think he's done a lot of maturing, and I think there's a humbling process of going to Cleveland, and I guess you could say failing, albeit not really his fault entirely. But yeah, so like you look at this move and you mentioned it, like there's rookie tight ends, there's guys, if you combine them, like form talent, but there's no like number 2 option or 1A option. The playoffs are all about matchups.
Yes.
This isn't a move for Thanksgiving against the Giants. This is a move for, okay, you're playing the 49ers again in the playoffs. Like, what are you doing differently this time around? Like, that's what this move is for. That's why he's so perfect, because it's like, yeah, he's getting medically cleared. What was it, this week, next week, whatever it may be?
It's so funny. Ian Rappaport or Adam Schefter were like, the time frame was end of November. Now it's looking like early November, early December. And then Jay Glazer comes on Fox. He's like, he's going to be ready this week. I'm like,
yeah, what? It's very, and usually, and Odell's like a big social media guy. I follow him on Instagram. He's on there posting all the time. He'd be the one to be like, glory to God, I'm back. Yeah. Like that's right up his alley.
Yes.
I haven't seen anything from him personally that says, hey, I'm back. So it's weird with the timetable, but again, with the timetable, all that matters is he's healthy in January and February.
Yes.
That's it. This is what this move is for. We'll get into the
100%.
contract situation of it all, but in terms of like matchups and how he fits, like this is so you have an extra weapon that people have to worry about in a playoff matchup. Like this is put yourself over the hump in the way that the Rams did.
And a weapon that can stretch the field or at least back the defense off. Like, what was the issue towards the back end of last year? That shell defense that defenses played and they couldn't beat it, right? If you have a guy like Odell Beckham to join with CeeDee Lamb on the outside, or no, you know what? Put Odell on the outside, Gallup on the outside, and then you move CeeDee back into the slot where he thrives. That's just another reason why Odell fits so well. Even if he's not catching 6, 7 balls a game for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, he's going to change this offense so much. He's going to be able to put pressure on the defenses, and it's going to take defenders away from guys like CeeDee Lamb, a guy like Michael Gallup, who maybe mentally isn't fully back yet off the injury. Once he's not getting that press coverage, once he's not getting a shell, he starts catching a ball and another ball and another ball. He's going to be mentally back. So I think he helps this receiving room across the board. They're also going to get James Washington back, who's also going to be somebody who's going to be able to stretch the field for them. Hopefully, he's coming off a broken foot later in the year. But how does CeeDee Lamb, Odell Beckham, Michael Gallup, and James Washington compare to CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, Noah Brown, and I guess Turpin? Maybe. So, like, he just adds such a dynamic to the offense that they just don't have right now. Is he the same receiver he was in New York? No, not at all. Again, he's 30 years old. He's coming off 2 ACLs, but he's a smarter player, right? He's a good route runner, and he's a playmaker. He goes and gets the football. I will argue they don't have a guy that just goes up and gets the football, and I don't think they've had one since Dez Bryant.
I think that's fair. And it's like we talked about this with the Eagles a few weeks ago, right? Like they're the physics project where everything's making sense and physically makes, like the pot hits a ping pong ball and the ping pong ball hits a pan and that goes into a cup and the cup makes the string go down and the string hits a hammer and the hammer hits the dominoes and they all fall. Like it feels like Odell would be that piece that like makes that sync up, but for the Cowboys. And
he's that piece that you've been putting this thing together and the hammer never hits the domino. Because you're missing one extra little twerk that you needed. Mm-hmm. He is that little piece that will make the hammer hit the domino.
Now, it seems like the entirety of the Cowboys fan base knows that. It feels like the Cowboys themselves and press conferences have known that. Does the person who operates the checkbook for the Cowboys know that?
So we need to figure out who that person is, because it's actually funny. I've been fighting with people on Twitter all day about who is the ultimate decision maker. Is it Jerry? Is it Steven? I think Jerry has been wanting to make a splash, especially over the last couple of years. He made a splash when he went and got Amari. He loves making splashes for wide receivers too. And we found out that they were definitely in on Cooks. They were in on Jerry Jeudy as well. So they know they need to upgrade this wide receiver room. But I feel like Steven's been talking Jerry out of making the splash in recent years. We all know that, Cat Boy, as we like to call him. But I think Jerry is realizing, how many more seasons does he legitimately have left? He wants to make a splash. He loves players like Odell Beckham. He even said it the other day himself. A star on Odell Beckham's helmet would look great. And it would. So I think it ultimately depends on who's going to make that decision. Is it Jerry? Is it Steven? If Jerry literally makes his son go up to his room and gives him a timeout and makes the call and signs it, I think it's going to happen. If he lets Steven talk him out of it because $1 to $2 million they can't agree on, then we have a problem.
So here's the thing with the Cowboys front office. They've been stingy. They've made some bad trades. The Amari Cooper one continues to look like a disaster. The big splash thing, here's where, if you're a Cowboys fan, you should be frustrated if he ends up for Buffalo for any reason aside from the fact he just wanted to play with Josh Allen. It's the fact that this is a big splash in name. This shouldn't be a big splash in terms of financial commitment. This is a guy you're getting for half of this season. I'm assuming at age 30 off of 2 ACL tears that he is going to want to have multiple years on his contract.
3 years, I believe he wants.
3 years and basically 2.5 at this point, right? This financial commitment will not be that large in terms of NFL wide receivers.
And they have the money to do it.
Exactly.
They have the money to do it now, and they know they have the money to do it next year because you said, we mentioned them, those young tight ends. They're not re-signing Dalton Schultz next year. They have that money already freed up for a guy like Odell Beckham next year. And I guarantee you, they will find a way to work in incentives in the contract. You catch X, you will get Y. You have X amount of touchdowns, you will get Y. They'll figure it out. They have the cap space. They have the ability to do it. Now go out and do it. Do it for, for the most part, I feel like you're either a Cowboys fan or you hate the Cowboys. But at the same time, like, does America really want to see him go join the Chiefs and just add to what they always have? No, I don't think.
As you can tell by the banner behind me, yes, but
it just makes too much sense. He is the perfect addition. The wide receivers, Michael Gallup on TV, right? CeeDee Lamb being interviewed. We want him. Go get him. Micah Parsons literally on Twitter recruiting him. Dak recruiting him. Zeke recruiting him. I have never in my 35 years have seen something like this, except for in the 90s when Troy, Emmett, and Michael all told Jerry, go get Deion Sanders. And they went and got Deion Sanders. And what happened? They won another Super Bowl.
Wow. Pitching a big name free agent. This is just a Tuesday in Philadelphia. Everything they're doing is everything we've been doing for Trey Turner.
Yeah, exactly.
For about like half of a season already. But no, so like we talked about this to bring it full birds versus boys scale. Like a lot of the moves that have been working out for the Eagles are just like common sense moves. Like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, you have the Saints first round pick. You gave up a few picks for Chauncey and it wasn't anything of huge value. And you have the guy locked up for this year next. Like Odell, like this is just like common sense stuff. Like it's a position of need. It is going to cost you less money than you would have paid Amari Cooper. You have the money to do it. You've already paid your quarterback, which is the position that sucks up the most of your cap space. Yep. You have 2 years until you need to financially commit to Micah Parsons. We talked about it. This is like a 2.5 year deal for Odell.
And Trayvon Diggs.
And
CeeDee Lamb.
Yep. That, which is wild. But hey, that's the beauty and the curse of drafting well. That's what creates parity in the league. But again, like this can be mixed in with that. There's no draft pick compensation you'd have to give up. You can sign him for less than you would have paid Amari Cooper.
Yep.
He fits in the position of need. He helps your quarterback that you financially committed to.
Yep.
Why not? Like this feels so obvious. So I guess the last question that we need to talk about is how reasonable it is to assume, because the Cowboys are an option, but I think there are other options. And I think the Cowboys odds have improved recently with what's been going on. So like the Packers, for instance, they're 3-6. They were a contender because they were a contender, right?
I think they're
probably out. So you're looking Bills, and it looks like Josh Allen for a second there. It looked like they could have been out if Josh Allen had to have like Tommy John surgery or something like that. Bills, 49ers, Cowboys. Like Chiefs, how reasonable is it to assume this with those other teams?
So there's a couple. So yeah, I think it's the Cowboys. I think there might be a little gap. And then I think it's the Bills, the Chiefs, and the 49ers. I think that's really what it is. Now, there's been news out there. It's funny. There's two spectrums of thinking. One, I've heard he doesn't want to play in a cold weather city because coming off the ACL. So does that take out a place like Buffalo and Kansas City heading into the playoffs? Maybe. But then I've also heard he'd rather play for the most part on natural grass rather than turf. Does that take out Dallas because AT&T Stadium's turf? We don't really know. And I think dollars and cents will be the ultimate. But on top of it, where are you going to fit, right? I think he fits perfectly probably in all of those teams.
Mm-hmm.
I think you need to also factor in the city and the nightlife. I think that's still a thing for Odell. And what happens in Buffalo? Probably nothing. What happens in Kansas City? Probably nothing. San Francisco? Okay. I mean, I don't know if Dallas's nightlife is the biggest in the country, but I'm sure it's fun. It's a good city. I've been there. It's a good time. And I really do think he's somebody that you do need to show the love to. I mean, I've heard some things, Von Miller out there. Haven't really heard anything from the 49ers. Maybe it's just because I'm so close to this Cowboys team and monitor this Cowboys team, but I feel like nobody's loving him right now as much as Dallas. It's all over national media. They're literally going out of their way. Mike McCarthy never says anything about anything, and he's literally at a press conference saying how much he likes Odell, and then on the radio station on 105.3 The Fan on Friday morning on his weekly interview said how much of a great fit he would be on the team and the locker room. For the head coach to say something like that who never says anything, they are full court press.
I was about to say, this is a full court recruiting press, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them. Like we talked about, it makes so much sense. Like, why not? This is the day and age of 2022. Like, your star player tweets at the other star players and tells them to come play here. Like, that's just the beauty of it. Can I add one more? And I haven't looked at the cap space to see if it's even possible, but just we've talked about this team and how fun they are.
Don't say
I was thinking of like cities where Odell would shine because he would like the city. He's played in New York. He's played in LA. What's third usually?
Don't say Miami, please.
Miami, right? Like Miami, it's a good team. So he's going to a contender. It's warm weather. It's a city like Odell was made for Miami, right? Like that's just an Odell city. And you put that core together of Odell, Tyreek Hill, and Jalen Waddle. And is that the Super Bowl favorite?
I mean,
like it might have to be.
If Tua doesn't get another concussion, probably. Right? I mean,
exactly.
And that would be a problem, I think, for any defense. Because like we said, they can put up 35 right now on anybody. You add a guy like Odell to that offense, and he's your number 3. No, thank you.
They're daring you to beat them in a track meet at that point. And I don't think a lot of teams, even the Chiefs, ironically, don't have the resources to do it because the Dolphins have Tyreek Hill now. And that's like Josh Allen and Mahomes are better quarterbacks than Tua, but you give Tua those weapons, they could hang 40 on anybody, including the Eagles.
But I think another thing for Odell, he wants to win another ring, right? I'm not saying Dallas is his best option to win a ring, but it may be his best path to get to the Super Bowl, right? The other options, if they're in the AFC, we've talked about this on our podcast this week's Birds vs. Boys. Go check out the episode now, 135. That the NFC is so mediocre. It's the Eagles, it's the Cowboys, it's maybe the Vikings, it could be the 49ers, and probably nobody else. Yeah. If you go to a team like Buffalo, you go to a team like the Chiefs, you go to a team like the Dolphins, you're playing those other 3 teams that are juggernauts just to try and get to the Super Bowl.
The pathway gets a lot harder. And that's something you have to consider. But it's like there's no perfect team. There's a lot of pros, especially the Cowboys. I feel like there's a lot of pros, and who knows about like the cold weather thing, the turf thing. I know the NFLPA is asking to get rid of the artificial turf to replace it with all grass. I know that's where he got hurt at SoFi on that artificial grass. So like maybe those things do play a part in it. Maybe the city does play a part in it, or maybe he just wants to play with a good quarterback and he's like, yeah, I'm not going to go to Jimmy G. I'd rather play with Josh Allen and let him bomb it to me. You know, it's like, there's so many factors that there's no team that's perfectly pro. There's no team that's perfectly con. And I think that's what makes it so interesting. And I do think that the Cowboys have a very, very legitimate chance to get this guy.
And that, like you said, that's what makes it fun, but that also makes it stressful for a guy like me who is hoping to sign. I mean, I've heard that we're probably not going to hear anything on him until after Thanksgiving. So early December maybe is when he signs. So I think we still have a couple more weeks of this, of Odell watch. But, as soon as I say that, we'll probably drop this video and he'll sign on Saturday.
Of course. Now, one more thing. This is my last point because you brought it up of not probably knowing until Thanksgiving. So I remember when the Eagles, we wanted Jalen Ramsey so bad. It was like almost everybody's just like looking over their shoulder, waiting for the reinforcements, waiting for that Jalen Ramsey trade. It never came, right? Like, So, but at the same time, like people were like, okay, this game, like you got one eye on the game, one eye on the trade market. 2 big games coming up for the Cowboys, Packers, and then right back at it, Giants on Thanksgiving. If you're looking over your shoulder doing the recruiting press for Odell, does you get caught up in that and fall, and now you're 3 games out of the division before Odell even steps foot on the field? Like, do you get too carried away with this if that's possible?
I hope not. I hope
Let's hope
not.
not.
That's why you just need to go take care of business. Keep winning ball games and keep recruiting, and hope that your front office makes the right move. I think it's, we also said he's built for a city like Miami, but I think he's also built for a team like the Cowboys. Can't you just see a star on his helmet?
Yep.
It
Feels like
just
it's destiny from the start.
and Odell, if you're watching this, because I know you are, don't go back to New York. You don't want to play with Daniel Jones, man. Everyone's like, "Oh, come back. It's a great stuff."
Buddy, if you didn't like Baker Mayfield, I don't think
Yeah.
you're gonna like Daniel.
Oh God. So we'll see. I mean, like you said, it is a position of need. I hate people saying like, "Oh, you got CD. Why do you want to go get Odell? Oh, does that mean Dax?" No, it is a position of need. They have CD Lamb, Michael Gallup's banged up, and then they have you and me. So the wide receiver room needs to be upgraded. They didn't make a move at the deadline. They were very, very close on 2 players. This just makes too much sense. This reminds me of, you may have been too young, I don't remember, when Brett Favre and the Packers went out and got Andre Rison, the receiver, after he was released. I believe they went 8-0 and went on to win the Super Bowl after they signed him in the games that he caught a touchdown that season. So this reminds me of a situation like that. If they could be, I think they're one move away from being right there with the Eagles. I'm not going to say this move puts them above the Eagles. I think they're comparable teams. I think the Eagles obviously have a little bit more in terms of depth and overall structure, but you get a guy like this, it's like playing Game 7 in the World Series. Anything can happen.
It just evens it out. Yep.
So we'll see.
That's it. All right. So we'll definitely stay on top of this. We'll be talking about it. We'll be talking about the games. We'll have 2 reaction shows, Sunday with the Cowboys and then Eagles, Monday Night Football, and back next week with our regular show. We'll see if Odell has signed with the Cowboys or anybody at that point, but stay up to date with us. Birds vs. Boys on YouTube. Subscribe, follow on Twitter at Birds vs. Boys Pod, and follow us on TikTok as well. New power rankings just dropped for week 10. Look at that squirrel in the background. Follow us there, Birds vs. Boys Pod. Follow us everywhere, and we'll be back with more Eagles and Cowboys content.